problem solving and quick thinking, and like just you got to think on your feet.
Yeah, and like bands can be divas, let's be honest.
Well, officially, probably about like 7 or 8 years I've been doing sound officially, but I've been involved in theatre and production for much longer. But then I came back with kind of like this idea, and I've been sitting on the idea for a while. And I just went, what if there's no one making content? There's always like bands making content and like, that kind of stuff. But I don't think there's ever been like a sound engineer specifically talking about like what actually happens like behind the scenes.
Sweet guys, welcome back to another episode of Sludge Underground. I got a bit of a different guest today, but a very special one nonetheless. Please introduce yourself and what it is you do.
Hi there, my name is Savannah Vermaak. I am a live audio engineer and I am from Cape Town, South Africa. I work with a lot of people in the scene and yeah, excited to be here.
Yeah, no, fantastic. And how long have you been doing sound and have you been involved in the music scene overall?
Well, officially, probably about like 7 or 8 years I've been doing sound officially, but I've been involved in theatre and production for much longer. But I started doing sound specifically in Cape Town at about in 2021. And that's when I moved here. I moved here before then, but obviously COVID screwed us all over. But yeah, I started officially like just working in clubs and working with bands and things like that in 2021. And then yeah, from there on, just been doing all sorts of stuff. I worked at Artscape, did a lot of gigs there, and then for the past year and a half now, I've been freelancing officially again. Just yeah, doing things in the music scene.
Yeah, and what made you get into doing sound and live sound and those type of things?
Well, specifically, live sound was one of my lecturers. His name is Pierre Theron. He's actually currently filming Jeremy Loops's content. But he was such a cool guy. Like we had issues with our previous sound lecturer because I studied a technical theater degree, and this guy came in and he was just like talking about like music and like how important music is, and like the live scene is so overrun but also like understaffed, because everyone studies these degrees and they nobody does live audio, they all want to go into studio. So he kind of just introduced me. He did a beer festival in Stellenbosch and I was one of his runners, and that's where I realized, yeah, I want to do this. This is cool.
Yeah, you had one of those like epiphany moments of, you know what? Actually, this is going to be my life now.
And it was because like obviously doing production and doing like theater productions, like you get the kind of one side of it and it's very like formal, and there's these insane rehearsals and like you rehearse for hours and hours, and then like you do a show or you do 2 shows a day, and like it's all the same, it's all rehearsed, it's all scripted. But then with live music, like something that kind of I really enjoyed about it is like you never actually quite know what you're gonna get unless you know a band. But it's just cool. This band has this, and like cool. Okay, then just flip flopping between like what do we need? What are we gonna have to plug in? What are we gonna have to plug out? Stuff like that.
Yeah, and like bands can be divas, let's be honest. Art musicians and artists. Like I've witnessed
Yeah,
my fair share of like diva attitude and like behavior on stage. I'm sure you've experienced more than your fair share.
yeah. I must say the theatre people are sometimes a bit more dramatic about their diva-ish stuff, but I've seen some musicians lose their shit over over some really, really not not worthwhile things to lose your shit over. Yeah, no. I mean, I've dealt with the fair share. Um, I also try to be nice. I'm like so patient with people because I know that often like the sound guy gets such a bad rep for being like the grumpy, just fucking person behind the desk who's like, "Oh, I've been doing this for 7 hours, fuck you." But I try and be patient. I've only ever like actually had a problem with one person in the past, but we've actually reconciled now, which is amazing. So like yeah, you will deal with a lot of different people, a lot of different personalities. And if you're grumpy, sometimes it can make your life worse.
It just reminds me of like, so I spent a lot of my time in the Durban music scene, and there was basically one decent sound engineer at the time in the metal scene in Durban, and he fucking hated my band. Um, okay, and for good reason. For good reason, there is law there. Like it wasn't unjustified. And the same person, the same sound engineer, actually went on to become the vocalist of my band at the time, which is just like a wild turn of events. So
A wild turn of events, but it's great. Like, yeah, I think, yeah, I think that sound guys get. I mean, I don't know anything about the Durban music industry a lot because I mean, I've never been there. I'm from Berge, I did a lot of stuff there, like very small, like warmer pool city and like Jesters were the two places that only had bands, and that was it for the whole of PE. I mean, you get like sometimes like, or especially more of the alternative stuff. There's obviously people playing at the music kitchen and like, but they flip flop between genres quite a lot. And the only place to listen to like really heavy alternative kind of stuff was Pool City and Jesters, and now both of those places are closed. So it's like, where are you gonna go? But yeah, Durban, I'm not familiar with, unfortunately. But I'm sure it's just as like coastal town kind of vibes. Not many people stay there to do the things that we do in Cape Town and Joburg and stuff like that. So
no, you're absolutely right. It is definitely a problem within the Durban scene, which is slowly but surely changing. There's a lot of guys really doing their best to make it a better place, and just better for the alternative music community in general, which is really cool. But yes, there is definitely still like a struggle to that extent there.
no, I've heard. Obviously, like I don't hear about a lot of bands going there to do stuff. So it's crazy because I know that there are places there, but like the culture is different. The music culture is very different there. It's very focused on like hip hop and I'm a piano and like that kind of stuff, versus like where the culture in Cape Town and Joburg is a bit different. There's a lot of different people in the scene, and like even throughout like Africa, like the Vark and metal stuff, and like it's crazy to see that one particular place in South Africa just has no like alternative scene, but they're trying to revive it. So I guess
Yeah, absolutely. That just gave me numb flashbacks to my experience within the Durban hip hop scene. I'd rather like let me not get into that. And I wanted to like talk about some of like the content that you've been posting on Instagram. You were telling me a little bit earlier before we started that you've kind of done a pivot, you've done a little bit of a rebrand, and you're shifting towards like a little bit more of like educational content and just kind of like a life in the a day in the life of a sound engineer type of deal, and some of the experiences that you have. And one of them in particular stood out to me was where you were talking about a friend who phoned you up and like, God, please, I need your help. This venue has no sound. They didn't let me know. They didn't tell me. And uh, yeah, I've got bands here. I need sound. I need an engineer. Please, please, can you help me? And yeah, like tell me a bit more about like your experiences with that. That is something that I unfortunately see happen a fair amount. Like so,
hmm No, I mean, so I took a break from social media a couple of months ago, just to kind of stop the endless doom scrolling and all of that. I mean, we all have that. But then when I came back, my whole mission was to kind of, because like I said, well, like we were talking earlier, my Instagram was very like my personal stuff, just posting random things, random, posts, stories, reels. I wasn't even posting reels. But then I came back with kind of like this idea, and I've been sitting on the idea for a while, and I just went, what if there's no one making content? There's always like bands making content and like, that kind of stuff. But I don't think there's ever been like a sound engineer specifically talking about like what actually happens like behind the scenes. And I mean, I've seen a couple of people like, they post stories of like where they're mixing that day and stuff like that, like you also said. But I think it's also important because like with the education purposes especially, because like if you talk about what it actually feels like to be a live audio engineer, a lot of these kids like that come out of matric and like all of that, they like, I want to go study audio engineering, and then they don't realize that there's a lot of different fields and aspects that you can actually go into. It's sometimes not just audio, there's lighting, there's AV, there's all of these like possibilities. But with live audio specifically, like I find they go to all of these institutions and they go study a formal 3-year degree, and they do their practical for live is like 6 months, and that's like a little course that they do within their degree. And I'm just like, you're paying so much money to do a short little course in live, where because they mainly study studio, and then like you've got no jobs in studio in South Africa, maybe one or two that open up every few years. But yeah, so these youngins, they go and they pay exorbitant amounts of money, and then like eventually they finish their degree and they go, okay, cool, I'm going to work in sound. And then they go into like venues, or they go into a eventing company, and then they've got no experience. Like they've got no experience working with different types of equipment, different types of PAs, different, so that's one video that I did, which was like very focusing on like practical experience versus actually going to study and all of that. But yeah, it's just for the younger kind of crowd to kind of get a more experienced like eye to actually tell them like, this is what it really feels like to do live audio, this is what you do. And like, I don't want to discourage people, because obviously like this is actually the opposite. I want to encourage people to actually start learning more. And also like even musicians, like a lot of musicians don't actually know how much work goes into setting up for a gig. So they come there, and I mean they come for sound checks and whatever. And of course, yes, there's going to be a frustrated tech on scene, because they've been here for 6 hours, you just arrived, so kind of like just bringing awareness to everyone. And it sounds so superficial, but like it's just like, because our job specifically in tech is not to be seen and not to be heard. But I think like there's kind of like that balance now that's being broken, of like, if you have really good engineers, like you don't necessarily have to give them the the uh, what's the word, uh, the recognition live, on stage or whatever. But from backstage, if you give them the recognition there, if especially if they did a good job, like coming off stage, and instead of being pissed off, you go, oh, okay, thank you so much for your assistance. I appreciate your work, even though if even if something went wrong, because we all know the live industry is, that's it. We're all just trying to balance on like eggshells, trying to make shit work.
And like, let's be honest, like things go wrong. Like it's a fact of, it's just the nature of doing live music. Shit's gonna go wrong. Anything
Yeah,
that can go wrong will go wrong, and that statement is particularly true within like live music as
yeah,
well. And I think it's more down to how you handle something going wrong than it going wrong at all. So like, I think,
yeah.
if you can handle something going wrong quickly, efficiently, and to a point where people forget that it even happened, that is the mark of someone who's really good at what they do.
I mean, that's also what I said, like in my video. I was like, a lot of times, if you study, like say, no, you study live audio, there's none of that like quick thinking skills and thinking on your feet and problem solving, like quick problem solving. Like if a mic isn't working, cool, don't try and make that mic work, give them another mic on another line, just solve the problem quicker, and then afterwards we can figure out what went wrong. But there's yeah, you don't always have that opportunity. You kind of have to like try and assess the situation. But yeah, problem solving and quick thinking, and like just, you got to think on your feet, you got to be like, and also like if you get feedback suddenly, you got to know where it's coming from, which like point, and to try and find that is sometimes like really difficult. So like a lot of times, we we sit behind the desk, or we on stage, and we're just ready for something to happen. We're just like,
The most anxiety fueled job of all time. It's just
I mean, there's things that I do to keep myself calm, but like when something does go wrong, like your heart rate does go up, and it's just like, okay, let's, instead of panicking, No panic. We just solve. Just fix it, and then you don't have to panic anymore. There we go. Then it's done.
I feel like your content as well could be also very helpful and like educational for new musicians who want to make music as well and
Mm,
who want to start performing live. And the reason being is because I remember when I first started getting onto stage, my only experience was being mixed in a church band, and that is very different to a
yeah.
bar, like to a live music venue, to a bar, to like any kind of those stages. And you don't really know what to expect. You know, the guy is, all right, you give me something. And you're like, what the fuck do you mean? What do you want from me?
What?
Do you, is your
What do you
monitor
want
good?
in your
And you're like, what
monitor?
the, yeah, what the fuck's a
What?
monitor? What do you mean?
What?
Uh,
Yeah.
you know, and like I think for a new musician who wants to play like their first shows, watching that kind of content is really educational because it's so much. Being a musician who plays live is so much more than just the music itself. There are so many different aspects to what you actually need to do to know to be functional in a live setting. So I find it really cool. I really enjoyed watching like the videos you put together.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, I have to plan out content and like it's sometimes like last week I didn't post anything because I was a bit like busy and but like yeah, it's nice trying to think of new ideas and trying to see what I can talk about, next and yeah.
No, absolutely. I know the content struggle. Very much. I have deep pits of anxiety trying to think of what I'm going to talk about next. Luckily, we were all given, everyone in the music and the alternative industry space was given like content on a golden platter with Rocking the Daisies, and they're really. We were all given like a handout of like, yeah, here's something to fucking talk about. So
I also need to talk about oh, I would love to do it. Yeah, I'd love to do a video on just like festivals in particular. I mean, it's yeah, yeah. I mean, my latest video also called them out a little bit, but and but you have to like sometimes that is also what you do with content is like you got to call out people and like for their behavior. Like I'm not scared to be controversial sometimes because what I'm actually saying half the time has truth. And I'm sure there are a lot of musicians and a lot of people who work in this industry who can agree. Um, and if I say something really controversial, then so be it, and I'll be cancelled. And there we go. My whole social media is done.
like the problem with social media is like the unfortunate reality of it is that drama is what gets you heard in a lot of circumstances, which is it's unfortunate, but it's also I think it also has a lot to do with how you approach the situation, how you talk about it. You can call someone out and still be respectful about it. You know, that's I think that is a big difference between like getting cancelled or not. You know, that's I think a lot of people have that fear of being cancelled, but they don't realize that it's kind of the tone or the undertone of what it is that they're saying that gets them, that catches them out there.
Yeah, well, I mean, I try to keep it so unbiased. So like the call out or not call out, but the video that I did about venues specifically, like I didn't mention a venue specifically because I know that like naming and shaming gets you somewhere, but eventually you're gonna be blacklisted at that venue. So you can name and shame, but then you actually are hurting your own reputation by doing that. So by kind of keeping it vague and like kind of just saying everyone, even though it's not everyone. But if someone from a venue sees that and goes, "Ooh, I do that. Maybe we should change it." Although they probably don't give a shit. But it's as long as someone sees it and the musicians see it. That's the more important part for me is the musicians playing at these venues see something like that and go, you know what, you're actually right. Fuck, I've experienced that. This that actually sucks. Yeah, it needs to change because a lot of them don't realize that you know that is the standard is actually this, and you're getting this. So yeah, giving the musicians something to think about and like something to be like, yeah, actually, I can stand up for myself. I should.
It reminds me of like a situation where I had a friend of mine who very similar to your situation with the venue without sound. He also got a phone call and was like, "Hey, this venue has no sound. Can you help us out?" So bear in mind, this is a friend of mine who just happens to organize events. He is not a sound engineer, and he doesn't claim to be either. So he was like, "Yeah, cool, I'll help you out." And for like a stupidly low amount of like sum of money, he went out, set up all the sound for them, and mixed it for them. And the owner of the venue had the audacity to be like, "You're the worst fucking sound engineer I've ever seen in my life."
Oh my God.
And he was like, "What the fuck do you want
I
from
was
me?"
helping you.
Like,
What the hell are you saying? No, that's
yeah,
just rude. Sure. I mean, like you will always get flack for doing what we do, but like that's that I've never actually heard that. I mean, I've heard some terrible engineers, but oh
that was a wild one for me too. Yeah. And then like something that you touched on in some of your like your videos as well is that you've heard the observation before of, wow, I've never had a woman sound engineer before. um and tell me a little bit more about the. I know that's clearly not something that you tend to focus on. That's something you are a sound engineer, and that's that. um are there any like sort of unique challenges that you faced in doing this, and like comments like that?
yeah. I mean, I do. I have gotten some very strange comments. Like I had someone who came up to me immediately, like after a show, and the first thing they asked me was, "Are you a lesbian?" And I'm like, "What?" Okay. And he's like, "No, you're doing." I'm like, "No, thank you." And then he starts flirting with me, and I'm like, "No, what? No, that wasn't what I
What the
thought.
fuck?
What are you doing?" I mean, that kind of is a thing, but that I've dealt with. But I mean, I don't think there's anything specifically unique. It's just it's a lot of people get surprised because it's not something you see very often. So like I said in my video, like, oh, I've never had, like, yeah, because there's not a lot of us, not a lot of women. Maybe internationally there's a lot of women. I know there's a lot of women internationally, like some of the uh who was it, Prince's sound engineer was a woman, and like she literally got her first gig, I think, in 1976, and that was her first gig ever mixing for Prince. I'm like, what? But yeah, so you don't really see it often. And I think people are more like kind of surprised and go, oh, cool, okay, but it's the same equivalent as having like a female fronted band, like that's a thing that has been a thing for many, many years. And like, so when you see a woman behind the desk, it's like, yeah, it's you kind of get a little bit of like taken aback, like, oh, okay. But it is, yeah, it's a male dominated industry. It always will be, because it's just, there's a lot of physical work as well that goes into it. So like, you got to carry heavy speakers, you got to carry heavy subs, you got to carry heavy just equipment in general. And like, amps, if you've ever picked up an amp, a crown amp, you will know that it is not light. So I think that's maybe why it's stayed such a male dominated industry, because it's just physical, and as you're on your feet for like 15, 16 hours a day doing the Lord's work essentially. And and I'm not saying that there are women, like, you have to be a certain kind of person, and I'm not just saying woman or man, you have to be a certain kind of person to be able to work. Like, you have to be a little bit crazy to actually do this job. So I think it's just that, like, I think there's a lot of women who get intimidated by it and go like, oh, I don't want to work in live because I might get made fun of, or I might get intimidated by men who are carrying all the heavy stuff, and like, they're not letting me do the work, or so I haven't had to specifically had to work harder, but I have at points had to prove myself a little bit, like a little bit more, just because they don't. It's like that trust thing of like having a female tech, and they go, "Ooh, I don't know if I'm comfortable with this," and then I blow them away, and then then they go, and then I'm like, "Yeah, cool."
Once the novelty's worn off, it's like, oh, cool. That's just my sound tech. That's.
Yeah, no,
I personally am really glad that you haven't had like a horrible experience with it. That you don't have like horror stories to share. Um, that at least like takes like a weight off, like a weight off of my chest, I guess, is the way. Like, I feel like I got the
Well, I
saying
mean, I'm
wrong there.
also kind of intimidating. I'm intimidating as fuck. So I'm also like I don't take shit. So I try not to take shit because like you can't be feeble or shy in this industry. Like you if someone's being a puss, then you fucking tell them. And it's you have to grow that thick skin from the beginning. And that's something that I realized is that just don't let the people walk all over you. Because as soon as you let a band or like an artist walk all over you, you've lost their respect and you've lost their everything. So yeah, standing up for yourself, being confident in your skills, which I still sometimes struggle with, obviously, but every person struggles with that. But just not taking shit and like putting on that that face. So I think that's probably why I haven't had a horror story is because I look a bit scary.
What you said there is actually a trait of sound engineers in general, now that I think about it. Like, from my experiences with like live sound engineers over the years, that yeah, I feel like that would be a required, you're right in that being a required trait overall.
Yeah, no, definitely. Did you lose something?
I dropped the guitar pick, and I know if I don't pick it up now, it's going to be lost to the ether for forever.
That's a cool thing that I also like about being a sound engineer. I have an endless supply of guitar picks. I pick them up on stage all the time and drumsticks. It's great.
You've got access to the other end of the void. It's like,
Because I am at the other end of the void.
and then like, what are your plans moving forward? Like, in terms of the stuff that you're doing and the content that you're making. What is kind of the end goal? Is it something that you're just kind of doing besides just being educational? Is it something that you're doing for funsies? Do you want to grow it into something more?
Yeah, I think it would be cool to grow it into. It's obviously also just like to promote myself as a person in the industry, because the more you annoy people and the more you like get yourself out there, the more people go, oh, I know someone that you can hire, or like uh, that's kind of like the goal is to just get bigger and bigger till I get booked for bigger gigs and like working for different companies and like it's starting to work. I've already had a whole bunch of people who've reached out and like want to work and like now I have a church that has contacted me as well. I actually was there this morning doing their engineering and I'm going to go back later to do their nights, even though I'm not religious myself, but a gig's a gig. And they're lovely people, so can't complain there. But yeah, I think the end goal is to kind of just get bigger and grow as someone who does this, and then if I get picked up by a band, a bigger band, like even internationally or even locally, like to go tour and like do all of that, the same as what the people in the big boys in our industry do, like people like Jethro who tours with Velvedinia, and like that's an insane job, and now has his own studio and like all of that stuff. That's something I want to build towards, and like maybe do some reviews on things, on gear and like things like that. Have brands sending me things and I do a review, or so like at the point at now where I am, I don't have any of my own gear yet. I have some stuff, but it's like building that like thing so that I have PA and a desk and like microphones and like start building that, and then going from there. Like I already have an entity which I run, which is called Sine Waves Productions. So that's kind of like my own little project and my own production kind of thing. And yeah, just turning it into an actual company where I can start hiring out stuff and like hiring myself out. And yeah, that's kind of the goal there.
No, that's fantastic. Yeah, beyond that, thank you so much for taking the time to have a chat with me today. It's been absolutely great getting to know you and a bit more of what it is you've been doing. And I really look forward to seeing more of the stuff that you do and more of the content that you put out.
I hope I can keep it coming and keep it coming in fresh and hot and giving all the tea in the industry.